Fatherhood for the Rest of Us with Brandon Handley. Because you're already great at everything else, why not fatherhood too?
Hey there, Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. This is Brandon Handley here. Thank you for joining me today as I present a special series. It's going to be Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. I've got 3 interviews that I'm going to release over the next few weeks. This week is going to be Bryce Prescott, who is just an amazing coach who has also found some awesome success using the science of getting rich. Bryce and I basically just talk over the book. And he has, if you go to his website, he has also taken the time to go through and make some edits and commentaries on a version of Science of Getting Rich that you can download for free from his site. Be sure that you go ahead and check that out. Very cool. You can get that at bryceprescott.com. Until then, I hope that you enjoy this episode and the next few, as I know that they're a little more I've actually got comments down here on another laptop. So, Bryce, we are live, bud. So, thanks again, like I was just saying, for popping on with me today. Really excited for this conversation. As I was talking to you about before we got ourselves started here, is I've recently read the book by Wallace D. Wattles, The Science of Getting Rich. I'm looking for people who have had amazing success or any success really with the book.
Sure.
And you have not only had amazing success with the book, but you've had so much success with the book that you went ahead and you crafted your own version of the book, and with your own notes and really helped bring to light some of the harder to read material in the book. And you've been able to lace some of your experiences with it. But before we even get into there, right? Let's one thing I always like to do is, what can we help you celebrate today, Bryce?
Well, I'm just excited to be on this call. Honestly, it's the book, The Science of Getting Rich. I have has a special place in my heart. And to add to what I had heard you say, not only do I have a unique experience with the book as far as success, I've also had the counterpoint to that when I was abandoning the principles and kind of let things slide and became more passive and watching that success go away. And it was such an impactful and big part of my story that was the motivation to go and to recreate the book. Now, to be clear, I did not change any of the original text from the original author. That book is a masterpiece as it is. But anybody that reads it knows that it's old timey. I mean, it's like, well, here we're going to do in 2040. Like, it's really kind of got this language that if you don't like really zone in, it can be, just gloss your eyes over and go right over your head. And I thought, well, I feel such a kinship to this book that I wanted to make sure that those that might not have the desire to really dive in, but still want the message, if I could make that transition easier, I went in and created, almost like a dialogue where it shows the original text, and then I'll add a paragraph to explain something or add an example that makes it a little bit easier to understand. Absolutely. And it's been a fun run. I mean, I did that several years ago, and it still is something that I hold as one of my, I love that I did that. It's been a good thing.
Right on. Well, let's, like I said, and we said, I did read through it and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed actually the whole story that you built up even before, digging into the book. You talk about how you built a business of up to $250K in the first year, but then you disregarded a lot of the stuff that you learned in the book, and it all got, pissed away, right? It just kind of fell apart.
That was $250K in 2 months, not a year. So, I mean, it was
crazy.
That book, when it's applied, it's very powerful, like extremely powerful.
Right. I'm excited for the conversation just because I want to have the conversation with somebody who, like I said before, has taken this book and applied its principles and found tremendous success. But before we get into that too, you're a dad, right? You've had some experiences. You've beaten cancer through, not even through like traditional means. You've beaten it through alternative means, which I think is also just, you got a lot of great stories. You're doing stand-up comedy right now. You're doing,
that's what you call it.
I haven't caught one yet. So, I have to get back to you on that. And you're doing like peak performance coaching, and from a place that is, again, non-traditional. And I only say non-traditional because you're kind of on the bleeding edge, the forerunner with thought processes like this. And I think, and I'd be curious to your take too. Is your way of thinking with science of getting rich and some of these alternative ways? I know Harv T. Eckert, Millionaire Mindset, is another big one for you. Which of course now I've got to go read that. Is this way of thinking becoming more prevalent in our society, or is it still something that is being kind of actively pushed back on?
I think that's a great question, and I'm glad that we can dive into this just right out the gate, because it does set a foundation for what we're talking about. And when I hear you say that type of thinking, the way that I interpret that is thinking that understands on a foundational level that everything starts from within inside of you, and that the results that you achieve, the experience of life that you have, comes from within this sort of way that we approach our life and the experience of life. In the book, The Science of Getting Rich, Wallace D. Wattles uses the phrase, the formless substance. It's been labeled source, God, the universe. There's all these different things. That's like this thing that's out there that, we can petition in this kind of odd, energetic way, and that will in turn help us to achieve a certain, thing that we want to achieve. What I am really excited to see about what's happening both culturally and on an individual level is that message is so odd for a lot of people that they dismiss the idea that they would have that, because they have these sort of triggers that would be like, oh, really? Cool. Then. So you're saying that I got cancer because I chose it. Oh, you're saying, they go into this way that like they're trying to disprove the idea that their thoughts are things, and that your conditioned responses create a thought, which creates an action, which creates a result. And so there's becoming more and more holes in the defense against this being real. There's too many people now that social media and technology have made it to where people's stories like mine are coming out, where it's like, yeah, dude, like life will never get easier. Like we're not talking about changing life into Animal Farm or like this crazy, perfect robotic society. But what we're talking about is understanding how to navigate that to get the experience of life that what we want. And the rules are different than what we've ever imagined. There's this thing that happens when people start getting into the idea that they can actually control what their experience is by thinking, the law of attraction and The Secret was a great book that kind of got people thinking about that. It was very incomplete as far as how it works. It's great to go back to, old school with Wallace D. Wattles, because his book, The Science of Getting Rich, was one of the very first law of attraction type books, but it did it right. It wasn't just like, hey, dude, just sit around and think about what you want. It's going to show up. It's like, no. Like it starts here, and then you got to get yourself in motion, and then you've got to be willing to accept, and then you've got to keep, acting on your inspired thoughts. Anyway, to wrap all that sort of into one idea, it's less weird now, and I love that. I love that it's more open. That like I can have like my business as performance and mindset coach. I help people to see angles on where they're at so that it can adjust their behavior to make them have better results. And I can, in open conversation in public forums, bring up, I don't say the law of attraction per se, but I go, look, how we view things absolutely makes a difference on what we experience. If I'm thinking that the sky is blue, it's going to be blue. But even if it's cloudy, I can still see the blue behind the clouds. And yeah, I get it. So it allows us to then kind of feed people into this way where they understand that, oh, I do have more control than what I previously thought. And that's the whole point. The whole point of The Science of Getting Rich is to inspire hope in people that they can have a better experience, and that it starts with them and their thoughts.
Right on. No, awesome. And for me, these are becoming more and more prevalent, right? It just in my own life. My journey with like the personal growth space probably running right past a year right now, maybe 15 months, right? Where it's like you start to recognize that you have real choices in your life, and not just whether or not you want mayo or mustard on your things, right? Like it's just the overall perception of everything, and being able to
take your life and say, look, I can look at this in two different ways, a multitude of ways. And that is 100% up to me. And that's pretty powerful. And I think that's a lot of what's in the book. Let's you cite, so somebody came up to you and said, you need to read this book for 30 days and you need to read, I think it was chapters. I know 4 and 11 were 2 of the chapters. And I think there's like 3 or 4 different chapters. Why those specific chapters in this book? And do you remember kind of like which ones?
Let me, I've got my copy of the book right here. Chapters 4, 7, 11, and 14.
Mm-hmm.
And basically that's the chapter is how riches come to you. Chapter 11 is how to use the will. And chapter 14, I believe, is acting in a certain way. One of them is gratitude. I apologize. Okay. But basically it's a formula that just kind of keeps hammering into your head. You got to be clear about what you want first and foremost. Then you've got to get your butt in motion. Then you've got to be thankful that it's coming to you. And the reiteration of that sort of thing is very, very powerful. One of the things that I see, not just in self-development, but in business and in life, is people want to get to their goals as quickly as possible. But yet when you start to poke at them, they really don't know what they want.
Right.
It's a very different experience for me to have a goal of, a brand new Ferrari, or to understand why I want that Ferrari and what having that means to me and the feelings associated with that. One of the misconceptions that a lot of people have in their growth and development is they don't honor how they feel about it. Like if you break down the science of achievement, the science of getting rich, it really is, painting, if you will, from feelings. Mm-hmm. When I say I want a Ferrari, it's not that I give a crap about, this Italian-made sports car, other than I love how it feels to drive. I love the exhilaration of what it means to have it. I love the prestige that it means for me and how that reflects on me. I love what it feels like to speed in at the sound of the engine. I love being surrounded in high craftsmanship. Like all those things are associated with how you feel about the experience. And so when you dive into, in the Wallace D. Waddles, he talks about, being clear and having going about it a certain way. It's using the feelingness of it as the compass.
Right.
If you have, all of your goals achieved, but you hate your life and you don't have any sort of abundance or thankfulness, you didn't get the life you wanted. It's about how you feel about it. And that's kind of, it's a funny thing when you start to dive into that book. You realize that he's kind of tricking you into this. He's caused you to say, oh, this is the science of getting rich. And it's like, oh, well, wealth, yeah, it includes all this other stuff, but it's about having a life where you're really in tune with who you are and what you stand for and why you want it, and doing well by other people and doing well by your family and creating a legacy. And that's noble to me. I love that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that you hit on in here is, being very detailed and being very specific in what you want, also attaching those feelings to it. But it kind of reminds me of just about any one of those space travel, time jump, future jump things. You've got to know you've got to have a good detail of where you're going to land, because if you're wrong, you end up like stuck in the middle of a mountain or something like that. Right. Yeah. I mean,
well, the flip side of that is that from an energetic standpoint, you can't gain really any velocity towards your goal unless you know where you're going. Like the universe won't say, okay, dude, here you go. I don't know where I'm taking you, but it's happening quick. And then you end up in a mountain to use your example. It'll just kind of like slow you and kind of redirect you. Like the clarity issue is something that's extremely important to this whole equation. Like you've got to know exactly what you want.
Right. I think that it also offers you the ability to really train your brain to look for those details that it knows to have that to look out for. Right.
Yes.
So again, just so much. The book to me, man, is just like, I can't go like probably 2 or 3 lines in this book without being like, oh my God, just like whap after each and every one of them. One of the things that you hit on, and I was actually really curious to see, was, what was your definition? Because this is throughout the book. It's always like, do this in a certain way, do that in a certain way. And you're like, this is it. Like, just define what a certain way is, right? And so you took that on, and if you don't mind, like kind of giving the audience what what that means. Like, what is the getting to a place in a certain way, or what does it mean to act in a certain way so that you can get rich?
Well, I love that you bring this up, because it's a fluid sort of definition. I mean, basically the word certain, both in our language and in the book, has many different definitions. Certain means clear. It means resolute. It means specific. So when you factor in that, you can actually think, okay, so if I'm going to act in a certain way, let's just take those three things. I get to act in a clear way, in a resolute way, and in a specific way. Okay, so what does that mean? And then that becomes something that you apply based off of what your goals are. So one of the things that I really appreciate about the book is it was the first book that ever introduced to me the idea of gratitude in advance. That, like, there's this, as he calls it, the formless substance, the universe, source, God, whatever, that's got everything, access to everything we could ever want. And then through my thoughts and my actions, I petition that for what I want. And then I just sit back and follow the inspired thoughts that bring it into be, but I'm grateful in advance that I receive it.
Right.
And so when you consider gratitude in advance from the context of what does the word certain mean, it means that I'm looking at, it's like I ordered it on Amazon and it's just in transit right now. Like, I'll be here. Like, I'm good with it. Like, and then acting in that sort of certainty, in that certain way that, yeah, it's already here. I'm just waiting for it. Like, it's coming.
I would say, is this kind of like where you say, you act in gratitude as if, but you've already established what that feeling is going to be by creating this such a specific image and idea of how it's all going to feel. And once you feel that, like, you get that feeling, you lock that in, and you're grateful for it. Mm-hmm. Like, is that what you're talking about? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like because in the book, he uses the phrase, live in the new house, wear the fine clothes, like, allow yourself to be in the moment, the emotional moment of what that experience is, and then be thankful for that moment. And then when you step back out of that moment, being thankful that moment appears again in a different dimension, which is your real life. So, right. Again, it's interesting because he's very crafty in how he made this message sort of to hack you into realizing that it's about where you take your thoughts in your mind. And then once you know what that looks like, and then acting on the inspired thoughts that get you there. So it's a very similar experience. When you go, if you've ever daydreamed about, living in a big fancy house and then go walking through a big fancy house that's yours, it's similar. Like, and it's
I think your mic just changed.
Yeah, hold on. Let me make sure that's. I think my USB just.
There you go.
We back? We good now?
We're back, yeah.
Okay. Make sure. Yeah, we're good now. So yeah, it's the gratitude in advance is one of the most misunderstood but yet powerful principles that can exist. I mean, think about the example I used of Amazon. Like, everybody knows if they order for something from Amazon, it's going to come.
In 2 days, man.
Yeah, Prime, dude, like, it's coming. So use that same sort of like emotional template when you're dealing with orders, if you will, from.
I love that idea. I love that concept. Bryce, this is, I think, where a lot of people get twisted in the act as if methodology. Because, and I will tell you from personal experience, like, everybody's like, act as if, or you've got to become, the person you become is, the process and all that other stuff, right? Yeah. It gets kind of twisted up in actually trying to do that, right? Like, you wrote down, like, a certain aspect of it is not fake it till you make it. It's make it till you make it, right? That was the line that you used. But I think a lot of people get confused or caught up in acting as if it's already been granted, right? Acting as if. And I think that your presentation that you just gave really helps clear that. So I want to say thanks for that, especially for anybody who's listening. It's not to say, I mean, what would you tell somebody who starts to act as if everything's already happened, but it's really faking it, right? How do you clarify that for others in another way?
Well, that's a great question. And it's tricky because, first of all, it's not my place to call out or to, be like, dude, come on. Like, but on the same sort of, breath, intellectual honesty is very important to me. If I'm going to be a part of something, I want to make sure that intellectually it's an honest process. And my actions have to be in line with that intellectual honesty, both by word and by deed.
Right.
And so, the answer lies in the book, really. He talks about being an advancing man.
The best part of the book for me. Anyway, I love it.
Yeah. He's like just being bigger than your position. And that naturally that's how it works. Like when you show up in the moment, bigger than the moment. And that's not so much, being like this big flamboyant personality. It's about just energetically commitment, being bigger than the moment. Like if you work at Subway, be the best damn sandwich artist you can be, and you'll end up with that. Like there's things happen when you allow yourself to be bigger than the moment. And so the whole fake it till you make it thing, one of the reasons why I use the phrase make it till you make it instead of fake it till you make it is because you're not required. We have it twisted. We think that the only respect that we would ever receive is if we've already done it, but yet in order to get that respect, we have to do it.
Right.
And so people try all sorts of nefarious ways to, kid themselves and kid others. And, unfortunately, sometimes it worked, but every time that it worked doesn't mean that it was honest. And so for me, how it's something where the process is so quick when you start to really dive into what this is and get what you want. It's not about me bragging about things I don't have or acting like I have something that I don't. That's completely erroneous. It's about understanding what's available. Like you know as well as I do, when you talk to somebody that's a real killer, that's like is really powerful in what they do, you have zero like doubt in that they are going to achieve what they're talking about.
Right.
And from the flip side, be that person. Right. Be that person that's so like it's funny we bring this up. I'm in the middle of my own sort of renaissance right now, this like kind of rebirth. The experiences that I share in the books specific to real estate, those happened to me in 2008. And it was a process where I was introduced to a couple books. I got The Science of Getting Rich, and then I ended up applying it, and everything happened really quick and had a 4-year run that was very, very incredible. But yet it was not perfect. And on the tail end of that, coming out of that with, issues with my health, issues with finance, like bankruptcy, relationship issues, all sorts of stuff where it's like, I'm looking back at this going, what a bunch of garbage, man. Like it worked for a little bit, but then it didn't. I wasn't being honest with myself because I had abandoned what was working, thinking that I had developed into this like wizard that I could just make things come out of thin air. And I was overlooking the absolute eternal truth that every decision comes paired with a consequence. Like you can't get away from that.
Is there a trap in that then? I guess.
Absolutely.
So
and I see it happen all the time. Like there are people that are really close to me right now that are in the middle of that trap. Where like then it's like a drug. Like you get into this new way of thinking and it's really exciting and it gives you hope that you can have this great life that you want. And so you start acting upon it and doing that, and you get some of the results coming quickly. And then all of a sudden something changes and you go back to your old habits, and then the results die off and you question the formula. It's like, well, no, you didn't complete the formula.
Right.
And then you get like, and this happened to me, I had to kind of grow out of it. It took me a couple years. I then let my own sort of bias overshadow all the good that had happened by living in that way, thinking that it was just another one of those fads that, I was, because part of my story was I was able to take advantage of an unprecedented market in real estate that has never happened before. Don't know if it'll ever happen again. And I just was poised at the right time. Well, It's not my job to define how lucky I was. My job was to admit that I started thinking differently, acting differently, and it made it so that I got different results.
I want to ask this then, in the book, he talks about, wherever you are right now is perfect for you to take advantage of the situation. And what you're explaining is like you started to apply these things and you found yourself in the perfect position for the world to kind of, or, universe, whatever you want to source opens up and gives you like everything that you wanted.
Yeah.
When you say
the universe uses existing means as well. Like that's the funny thing when I look back at my experience, like I was timed perfectly to make that work on the universe's timetable.
Right.
Like I was ready. And it's like, well, cool. This is easy. Here you go. Boom. Take advantage of the market. where, you
Right.
know, I see a lot of people now having very similar experience within like the cryptocurrency world, where like they were perfectly timed to make a big thing, and all of a sudden, oh, it was because of the market and I took advantage of that. Well, yes and no. Like you were ready for that time as well, for those that are taking that sort of route. Anyway, I interrupted your question, please.
No. I mean, there's also the willingness to perceive it that way, right? There's a willingness to perceive it as the universe is giving you everything that you're asking for, because you are going about things in an advancing, in an advancing way. And I actually kind of want to elaborate a little bit more on like talk, if you don't mind, a little bit more to what it means to be an advancing man. What is that? How does that define to you?
To be an advancing man means that you are consistently looking for ways to expand your influence, your income, your impact, your intellect. It's about being bigger than the moment. It's about being a value creator. When I think of the people that are most influential in my life, and I consider them, you know, not just advancing man, but advancing people, whether they're men or women, they are those type of ambitious people that are students of life, students of energy, students of interaction. Those really, you know, iconic characters, where they become iconic. That's what it means to me. When I think about that for my own life, I think about, you know, all the content that I create, my podcast, the videos I do, the coaching that I do, everything about my footprint that's there to help other people. I'm inspired by those that have come before me, because that's a tall order to consider yourself that type of person. And for me, an advancing man or advancing person is that you walk into every moment looking to maximize the moment. And there's a number of different ways you can maximize. It can be through relationships built. It can be through money made. It can be through impact. It can be through whatever, but that doesn't matter, but just maximizing the moment based off of what the moment is with the people you're around.
Can you say that? Can you look back at your life and find places where you were doing that unconsciously, and that's where you had success? Because that's another thing that the book talks about is there are certain people who have had success with the same methodology, but have done it unconsciously. After you figured out this methodology, the question is, were you able to look back and say, "Hey, wow, I can see where this showed up in my life unconsciously"?
Yeah. And on the flip side, I could see where I had stopped its progress too. You know, I shared just previously about how I'm in the middle of my own renaissance. You know, when I had that several years of real estate and did financially better than I could have ever imagined. And then tail end of that, kind of got out and redefined what I thought success was, started a different podcast several years ago. And, you know, that one shut down, and I've got a different one now. But I haven't put so much focus on money. I by no means am I broke by that. I'm saying it's just like I have not tapped into that higher level of wealth that I had done before from a conscious standpoint, where I was literally looking to get those higher levels of wealth.
Right.
And I realized from a performance and mindset standpoint, and as a coach, that's kind of hypocritical of me. Like, what am I doing, dude? Like I get to be involved to be an advancing man and a man of influence and impact. I get to be not just well off, but truly fucking rich, like really, really rich. And and by explaining that, apologize on the swears if that's not something that you on your show here. I get to be involved in that. And so I'm looking around at things like that have been sitting there for me to take advantage of, to have there be more impact and income in my life that will do nothing except magnify my power as a coach.
Right.
Nobody wants a coach that's just kind of good with money. They want one that's powerful, right? And I've been great, but I could be way better than I have. And I'm looking at this going, okay, so if I want to impact more people and impact a higher level of person, a more influential person that then is going to take what they learn with me and then go change their world in an impactful way.
Right.
I got to have the same jersey on. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah. Look, man, look, I'm wearing the Bryce Prescott jersey today, dude.
Dude, I know, man. We're going Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg. It's all that bandwidth. I don't got to worry about what I'm going to wear.
There's also in the beginning of the book, and you touched on this, and you actually you gave me a nice insight that I had not even thought of. Talk about capital, because when I think of the word capital, I'm thinking strictly of cash income.
Sure.
And the book
Yeah.
talks about needing a certain amount of capital in order to become rich. And he says that if you don't have capital, even if you're the poorest person, you can get capital. And but the person that has capital no longer kind of needs this book, really, or the capital. I love the expansion that you gave on that, though. So if you could.
Yeah. So capital is another one of those words like certain way, or phrases like certain way, where it's not just financial. There's a bunch of different ways to have capital. There's intellectual capital, which is ideas. There's relationship capital, which is knowing the right people and being in the right space. And obviously there's financial capital. And so naturally, though, because of our hardwired definition of what we think success is, we only think about money as the capital. It's like the overarching, like sort of like capital money. Okay, well, capital actually just means it's like a way of describing a stake, like not like a food, but like a claim. Like, so you've got to have a claim in. So if you read the book, like go get a claim, go find a claim, like it's an idea, it's a relationship, it's money, like it's a way to kind of hedge in or to have an angle into being able to do what you want.
Right.
And that's been really helpful for me because I've looked around at the different parts of my life where I might not have had access to money itself or credit or ways to get, financial capital. But I knew rich people and they believed in me and they were then able to come and help me to do things. Or I had a really good idea that I knew that if I could implement it, could raise a bunch of money quickly. And that just then it goes back to a very simple truth that I don't think a lot of people recognize. And that is, you, Brandon, me, everybody watching this and listening to this, we are superheroes in our own right. We just haven't acknowledged it. And by stepping into that idea that you have access to more than you need, it's the lines it's the fence posts in our mind that stop us from doing that. If we think about let's just consider financial capital. If we think about all the money in this world, there's a lot of money. Trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars are out there. And we just need a little bit of it. How close to that money are we? I mean, is it like I could look through my contact list. I have several relationships of very wealthy people that in the right situation, if I ever needed something really big, I could probably figure it out. But I pre-qualify myself out of that by thinking, oh, well, they, instead of it being like, well, it's better for them if we do this. So
because and this is because you're coming and hey, Dave Gieselman joined up with us. Hey, what's up, Dave? I
love Dave, man.
How can you not? There's a person that's going to look at all the reasons why they can't access that money versus what's the one way, what's the and like you're saying, you're going to these people with the thought that you're advancing not just yourself, you're advancing everything and everyone that this idea comes in contact with. And so why wouldn't somebody take a gamble on that?
Well, see, this is where we get we try to overcomplicate it. So let's use that scenario that we were just discussing, and we go to that guy and he says, "Get out of here, dude! I don't want to help you." We then go, "Oh, I failed. I don't know."
Right.
And then we cut it short. When in reality, what we might have needed most in that moment was how to handle the rejection. That was going to help us to see angles we hadn't seen before and see ways to see weaknesses. They call it red teaming or blue teaming when you try to, poke holes in an idea. It might have allowed us to think about something that we hadn't seen. And that happens a lot in our lives. That's where the certainty and the confidence of it on its way is super important. One of the greatest quotes in that book is, I'm forgetting the exactness, but basically the discipline that it takes to see abundance in the face of the evidence of it not being so is the most disciplined thing you can do. If the sky is falling and everything is going to hell around you, you're going to believe in this future moment that's going to be better. Like that takes a lot of work. And that's where we get to really heighten our sense of emotional intelligence. We get to be intellectually honest with what we're experiencing, and we get to just we got to be okay with the process, case in point, I'll share this example. I had something happen to me very recently where I was a part of a deal that was going to be bringing me a large chunk of money. I'll just put it that way. And there were things that I had already pre-planned about going to be using that money to do with. I can finally handle that. Okay, cool. I'll be able to do this. And I had stepped into the energy that I had already received it. I hadn't spent it yet, obviously, but like I was in that space, that energetic space of like, hey, this is what it is. I've created this moment to be this way. The relationship is what it is. And I was really excited about it. It was good. Well, then this really weird thing happened that I still can't explain, where the bottom fell out of everything at this weird, at kind of at the witching hour. And I was left with none of that and a deficit that was created by commitments that had been made many, many times in a row that ended up being broken. So I had like 5 commitments made that all got broken at the wrong time. And so I'm looking at this, not having this money, but also now having a deficit in place that I get to deal with to get out of based off of that not happening. And it kicked me in the nuts a little bit. I'm like, okay, man, I got to make this work. But in the process of all that, I was reminded of a simple truth that has been worth the experience. And the truth was, everything always seems to work out, man.
Right.
And like being like, okay. And everything always seems to work out, that like it's bleeding into other parts of my experience where, one of the challenges you brought up, that I've been doing stand-up comedy a little bit, and I do my coaching and everything. One of the challenges that I've had as a public figure, if you will, and I use that term loosely, I'm out there on social media. I share my life, on all my stuff, because as a coach, I want people to see the life that I live. And if they want their own version of it, I can help them to get that. And so I'm looking at this going, I kind of lost my train of thought on where that was going with that. I realized that it was needed because one of the challenges that I face is I bridle myself too much. Mm-hmm. So like I'll have a really like powerful thought or opinion or process, and I'll filter it down when I put it out there because I don't want to offend people.
Yeah, man.
And the reminder of everything always works out is coming in and kind of helping with that. It's like, dude, just let her rip, man. Like as an example, with the comedy thing, I've noticed comedy is an undiscovered tool to help people really learn things on a deep level. And the reason why I got into stand-up is I wanted to be, I've always been funny. I've always been, I have that as a trait, but learning how to do stand-up is a completely different experience. I mean, it's so hard. Oh my gosh, it's so hard. But the process of learning that has helped me to be a better coach, and that I'm seeing like different emotional angles on how to get a message or an idea to use that phrase inception. If I want to like plant a thought in your head, I got to use all the psychological tools available to me to get that to stick and not just go one in area out the other. Right. And laughter and humor is a really easy one that people don't look at. Like, no, we got to get back to business, man. We got to settle down. We got to take it serious. Dude, no, you're missing the point. Right. So within that, like I've been using now, which I had never done before. I was always scared to use, my sort of more quippy or witty side openly, just because I thought it would be looked down upon by my peers. And then I realized I'm not trying to get business from my peers. Like the people I'm getting business from love this stuff. And so I've started incorporating that more and more. As an example, it's so stupid, but I love it. I started doing this thing now on like my Instagram stories, and I put it on YouTube, that I call my Apple Snack Chronicles, where like I'll sit and eat an apple and tell a funny story. And then I'll have like a message at the end of it about why that's, a good thing to avoid or a good thing to do or whatever.
Right.
And it's really entertaining. And I've gotten so much feedback about it. And it's literally so stupid. It's like me sitting there eating an apple while I'm telling a joke.
I think that we in the coaching realm, I think that we overcomplicate it sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
Because we're so deep in it. We're so deep in it. That when we come back out, we're like, all right, everybody's got to know this, and like it is serious business. But like you alluded to just now, and as you do on your podcast, like let's have a couple laughs. Let's
Yeah.
joke a little bit. And I think that the laughter and the joking is more akin to like a hypodermic needle than a barber's saw from the 1800s, right? Because a lot of us, and myself included, I'm totally guilty of trying to give people what I think that they need instead of letting them take what they want. I guess is something like that, and laughter.
I love that distinction. Like, because at the end, and this is going to sound really selfish, but this ties back into the book.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, if I don't feel good about what I'm doing and I'm not having fun and I'm not feeling in my zone or in my purpose, I'm going to put out inferior stuff anyway, which isn't going to resonate with the people that need it.
Right.
So I'm actually doing them a disservice by bridling myself, even if I offend them to the moon.
The people that you're offending aren't your audience.
True.
They aren't your people. They aren't, they're the 2-drink maximum. They're going to get up and go. You know what I mean? Let's get back to the book. Back to the book. Just trying, again, just an amazing book. What is it that you like about the book so much that it really inspired you to doctor it up? It was the fact that you had gotten away from its principles and that you wanted to get back into it, and you felt like you needed to review its principles again. And you're like, I got to get back into this. It wasn't hooey. It wasn't, woo woo. Shit is real. Let me go back and remind myself why.
That was one of the things. The other thing it was at the very beginning of my coaching career where I had, I was hosting a podcast that was called Rules of Success at the time. And I was interviewing all these different people about how to have balance in your lives in all the important areas. And I say this with confidence, I could hold my own with every single one of those superstars. I would have deep, meaningful conversation with these guys to the point that I started having people reach out to me about helping them. So I actually had leads for a coaching business, and I didn't have a coaching business. But yet I've always been a trainer of some sorts. I look back throughout my entire entrepreneur career, whether it's been in sales or whatever else I've done, I always found myself as an educator or a teacher. And so it was a natural thing for me to have an understanding and be able to pass that along, or at least try to pass it along. And that book was on a short list of the basic doctrine of how I think when it comes to making a life better or transforming your life.
Yeah.
And so I thought, you know what, it's been a minute since I've read this book. I am going to create an entire coaching program based off of the principles of this. And so I went back and that was my first offering. I went and redid the book, added in the commentary. And I mean, it's not overbearing in the book. I would say that it adds maybe 10 pages to an already short book total,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I noticed that it really, the feedback that I've received, and this has been my experience too, reading it, even though it's my own words, it really helps round the edges of some of the more difficult things to really grasp in that book.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay. And then I actually even started like my very, very first coaching program that I had created after I'd finished that book was called Apply the Science. Come join me for my 12-week Apply the Science, based off the science of getting rich.
I bet that shit was a hit.
It wasn't. It sucked. And the reason why is because it was too much of a leap. It was too much of a leap into this sort of froofy space,
Yeah.
And so, now I call my program, my 12-week, premium reprogram is what it's called. And my superpower is basically helping people to reprogram their inner critic. So the voice that's in your head that's mean, I can help that to be different.
Sure.
Well, the truth of it be told, the underlying foundation of everything about the way that I approach coaching and transformation is outlined in some way in that book.
That and the what is it, Millionaire Mindset?
Millionaire Mind, The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And then there's a third one, which is called The Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. But that's a more spiritual sort of thing.
Right.
And I recommend that book to anybody that's having issues with God or religion or anything like that, just because it's really impactful. But so it became, I had a desire. I knew it worked, but I also knew that it was tentative, that we can't just read that book and then have a couple of nice thoughts on the back balcony someday and dream about our new big house and then leave it at that. Like that book, if you not just read it, but you read it, what it does is, are you still there? Oh,
I'm still here.
Oh, something came off of my screen that made it look like your window went away. When you read it, but not just when you read it, but when you actually read it, what it does is it allows you to see that there's freedom in habit. There's freedom in having a process to the way that you apply things to your life. Starting your day with mindfulness and thankfulness, defining who you are in a very real way, first person, present tense, having that be something you do on a day-to-day basis. Like these things, if you read between the lines, that's what he's saying. He's saying like, you gotta be in touch with what you really want and who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta be, it can't hurt other people.
Right.
It's got to be one that's based out of, I'll use the phrase love and expansion. And you got to be thankful and you got to believe. Like, so, the underlying tenets of what I teach is basically those same things too. Every time I work with a new person, what they're missing is usually one of those things. Not usually, always is one of those things. They're missing. And I'm not one of those guys that yells at you or like tries to like, boot camp you into like this new sort of regimen. Like it's not that at all. Like that doesn't work. That's a short-term fix. You might feel all good for 2 days or whatever, but then you're going to fall off the wagon.
Right.
And like Wallace D. Wattles talks about, like, and I don't think he uses these words themselves, but I'll use them in his behalf. Like consistency is massive. Like you've got to be consistent in your actions in a certain way. You've got to be consistent in your thankfulness and your gratitude and your expression of that, in your willingness to change your story too. That's one of the other things about that book that I think that gets lost in it is that, and I can say this from personal experience, we'll start with a goal and we'll get along the way and realize, actually, I don't want that at all. I thought I did, but I misunderstood what I wanted. And then we'll course correct and go a different way. And the end result is a really evolved person that has some really cool stuff and a lot of access.
Right. Right. In the book, he talks about the creative versus the competitive plane.
Yeah.
You want to dig into that?
Absolutely. That's one of my go-to messages, actually, when I start to see certain aspects of, no matter the industry, internet marketing, coaching, music. I mean, whatever, like people get really, podcasting, especially, you only have a certain amount of ear space to be able to, then it becomes a very competitive thought, or it can be a very competitive thought that you're competing for the attention of listeners or whatever. Well, when Wallace D. Wattles breaks this down so beautifully, he talks about the second that you believe in competition, you believe in a finite pie. You believe that there's only a certain amount of outcome that could exist. And that in essence lacks faith, because you're lacking the idea. If you're going to define that for yourself, it means you completely understand everything, and nobody ever does. And so when you are willing to look at the collaborative sort of mindset, and so just for the watchers and listeners of this, competition, think of like a sports game. There's two parties, they're competing. At the end, there's one winner. Okay. Well, collaborative would be a deeper dive into that sports game. The collaboration of it would be the movement between the teammates. And if their score doesn't beat the opposing people at the end of the game, doesn't matter. You were there to play a good team game. Sure, it matters, but it's not like it's the end of the world. Now, that example could be applied to a lot of things, but in my real estate business that I reference in the book, we did something that was unheard of, dude. Like we were killing it in our space and we were reaching out to our competitors looking for ways to collaborate. We're like, hey, we know we're doing some of the same stuff. What's ways we can build each other up and make this ride last longer? We recognized that the opportunity was going to go away at some point, and why not help other people along the way? We got looked at like the craziest people. Like it was so gnarly to be like, people, no, dude, we don't want to. It's like they thought we were trying to like punk them.
Right.
You're just trying to learn about us, and then you're going to go, like, it was so unheard of that in a competitive marketplace, we would want to collaborate. But to break that down in a very simple way, if you feel like somebody else could take something from you, that's a competitive mindset.
Right.
If you feel like your value is going to be rewarded no matter what, that's a collaborative mindset.
Right.
And there's a lot of competition between people that claim to be collaborative. I see it in the coaching space all the time. Like I look at these people from a distance that I respect and I love their message. And then when there's an idea to collaborate, they're really like, nah, I'm good. Like they want to keep their own little corner of their universe because there's fear associated with loss. And when you commit to the collaborative effort, you realize that the pie is bigger than I can ever imagine. So if I only have 5% of a massive pie, that's way better than 100% of a really tiny one.
I love that image. I mean, it also goes to, I think this is on your podcast too. If you reach out and you connect with one person, right? I know we all say it all the time. Actually, I've said it too. And I've admitted to being greedy and wanting to reach out to more than one person. But, if you reach out and you impact that one person, if today's conversation touches the hearts or minds of anybody in my group, and and somebody reaches out to you and their life advances, I'm all for that, dude. You know what I mean? Because first of all, then that means that it means a number of things, but I would rather that happens. They hear from you today and they're able to advance their life to wherever they want to advance to. And for me to try and hold back something like that, as in the competitive space, being like, well, he's a coach, I'm a coach, his mess is pretty fucking solid, not sure I should be sharing that with other people, right? Because they're gonna go to Bryce, and I'm like, all right, well, you know what, if I'm not ready, I'm not ready. If Bryce is ready and this person are ready, I got a bug flying around from my face, if there's a if something works there, then have at it, right? Because to me, that's kind of what we're doing here. That to me speaks to the advancement of each other as a whole.
Well, the part of I appreciate that you outlined it that way, and I want to add to that with you. The part of that most people overlook in that type of scenario, because what you just described happens all the time in its own different variations, where coaches won't work closely with other coaches because of that. They're like, there's intimidation, there's fear, there's insecurity, whatever it is. But I've had this happen both ways. And it reminds me that this is the better way to do it. I've had it be where I've involved myself with other coaches, and that coach ended up being a better fit for somebody that was following me for what they needed in that moment. And right. I could look at it like I lost a client or lost an opportunity, or I could be happy for that person. And I've chosen to be happy for that person. The other side of that, though, that's come, though, is that my unattachment to that and my willingness to recognize I might not have been the best fit, this guy probably is, has actually opened up more doors for me. Right. Where I've gotten clients who are like, dude, I loved how it became, they wanted to know that I was in it for them actually and not for me. And by me allowing the energy and the space to be like, dude, if I'm not the right person, no harm, no foul, like go, who do you need to? That has actually attracted people into my coaching business. We're like, yeah, I needed to know that you're in it for the coaching and for the transformation of the people and having it be a right fit. Right. I'm in now.
Right.
And you do the same thing. Like that's how this whole thing works when it comes to collaboration. That's truly collaborative. Like I'm not intimidated or threatened by you and your success. Why would I be? When you understand,
because I'm a monster, Bryce. I'm a monster.
Awesome. Man. What that means, though, Brandon, that means that I have a monster as a close associate right now.
Right. No, and I think that it opens up more space. I mean, it's the whole 1 + 1 = 3, type of thing mentality, yeah. And it's really true. I liken the idea of the I didn't liken it so much to pie when I read the book. I liken it to the fact that there is 90% of the universe that is 100% like unknown, that nobody knows anything about, that can't really be coalesced or created into like, material, whatever. And, I'm fine with like the woo-woo aspect of it coming out of my mouth, but it can't be coalesced until somebody, has those thoughts. Yeah. To bring it into being, because that's 90% of the universe is unknown, Bryce. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's a lot of pie. And wow. I'm willing to create. If I go at this from a creative aspect, if I literally create something myself, it can't belong to anybody else. I just created that. I'm not taking from you. I'm not taking from you. There's still 90% left of it's like when we talk about going to the ocean to take, drops of water, even, dump trucks of water. There's still a lot left.
Yeah.
Still a lot left. Anything else you want to hit on in the book? I think this has been an awesome conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I enjoy your podcast. I enjoy what you're doing now. I'm sure you're a funny guy. I have to catch some of the stand up. The Apple. What is the Apple skit? What's the Apple bit?
It's Apple Snack Chronicles. Just
Snack Chronicles.
They start on my Instagram stories, which ends up being on my Facebook stories, and then I take them and I put them on YouTube as well. So
nice. What is so where should I send everybody to hang out with Bryce Prescott?
I've got all my links on my website, just at bryceprescott.com. I've got all my socials: YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Facebook is there. I have there. You can listen to the back catalog of my old podcast, which is called Rules of Success, as well as my new one, which is called The Bryce Prescott Show. And I've got links to all the platforms, Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, YouTube for that. I've got a blog at my website. Basically, if you want to learn more about me and how to connect with me, that's the easiest way, is just go to my website, bryceprescott.com, and toy around there for a little bit.
If somebody wanted to get the Science of Getting Rich as presented by Bryce Prescott, are they going to be able to get it there?
Yeah, if you go to the coaching tab on that, I have 3 different free offerings for people that want to sign up for my email list, and it's right there. You click on the coaching tab, and it's just right below the fold where it has a picture of the book, and you click there, and it can take you right to a page where you can download it.
Awesome, brother. I want to say thanks again for coming in, sharing some of your time to let people know. Because basically, I was blowing my gasket over this book. And my success may not be as great as some others, and I really wanted to share. Just like when in sales, like you want to go get testimony from other people. Like I'm not making anything off of somebody else going and reading this book. And guys, I recommend going and grabbing this from Bryce as well, because there are going to be some ideas and you're going to be curious yourself, kind of what they mean. You've heard Bryce talk, you know what he's about. And the beauty of it is now you can kind of go through the book yourself and say, oh, I can see where he's coming from. And you can really line it all up. So guys, go check that out. And Bryce, thanks again. I'm going to take us off of the live stream